So thank you very much, Dr. Tiwari, for providing me the opportunity to initiate the discussion today. I was just looking through and I found that in the World Philosophy Day, I have been the initiator or have been the presenter a lot of times now. And I really feel very happy about it and also feel very blessed about it that I always get an opportunity under you people. Allow me to present also a few things. This paper is very technical by nature, but we will not go into the technicalities of it. Rather than we will try to stick to the idea which Dr. Tiwari proposed, as well as the concept, as per the concept note as well, that there is a need to rethink about a lot of things and see things in a way which was either not thought of or is not in vogue, and it provides a lot of I will say insights into searching for the truth as well as searching for certain kind of structures. So recently I've been working on this and this is a paper which I have co-written with Dr. Tiwari and Dr. Chaturvedi. I will share with you the screen so that we can have the paper with us. Now, this is the paper. I hope so that most of you can see it. The papers, Tiwari ji or Dr. Tiwari has put this thing up, that how justification undergirds the conclusion, a lesson from Aristotle. And it is true that this paper is actually about Aristotle and his ways. However, I have named this paper as Diagrammatic Isomorphism and the Venn-Pierce Diagrams for Syllogistic. Now, what is we will not go into the core of it. Rather, we will try to understand a very basic part of it, that what actually is happening. Now, let us go to a very basic or overview of the presentation. I will not take much of minutes. If I can ask Dr. Tiwari, how much time shall I take so I can rush through? Whether I
maybe half an hour.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So it is 8:01 in my watch. So I will complete by 8:31. We will go for the basic preliminaries of this paper, that what are the things which we are discussing in this paper. We will also talk about the list of valid syllogisms. Some students know about syllogisms and validity. Some students may not be aware about it, but does not matter. You need to follow the line of argument. So that is more important. We will also talk about some numbers. These numbers have become very important for the study of syllogism. So we will talk about it. We will in a very short way, we'll like to see what are Venn-Pierce and what are Euler diagrams. Then we will discuss three very important concepts which are found in diagrammatic studies. Two of them are proposed by me, and one of them is already available in the texts or in the literature. And then we will go for the observation. So we will try to move fast from this part so that we should not be bogged down by the technicalities of this paper. Rather, we will try to go for general observations and see that whether these kind of observations and these kind of approaches can help us with understanding certain concepts in a better way. Now, let me move further. The first thing is that there is a definition of syllogism, if you will see in Aristotle. So it is basically, the definition says like that if something is stated, then something follows out of necessity. There was no understanding of whatever we understand by syllogism these days. Now, these are basically the moss or the dirt which has stick to the study of syllogism with each passing year and then say decades and centuries, because the definition of syllogism as given by Aristotle was quite different from the definition what we study today. We talk in terms of mood and figure. We also talk in terms of validity or invalidity. There are two students who have, in fact, there are three students who have already studied syllogism and logic with us. And they know that when we define a categorical syllogism, we say that it must be having two premises, one conclusion, three terms, each of which occurring twice, and all these things. So these numbers have become very important. But this was not the case with Aristotle. So I will move with the preliminaries and go to the next one. The second thing is that Aristotle actually wanted to see that what are the pairs of propositions which will provide us with some kind of results. He was not interested in validity or invalidity. In fact, he never used this term validity or invalidity. He has used in some cursory references of validity or invalidity will be found, or else he will say that there is a syllogism which is formed, or a syllogism is produced, right? And in that way, he wanted to say that these are certain concludent and inconcludent pairs. I will talk about this a little bit later. He talks about this concludent and inconcludent pairs. Concludent pairs mean that a syllogism is possible. That means a conclusion is possible out of it. And a syllogism, if you do not know, is basically an argument. So we are talking right now about an argument, that how to check the validity or invalidity of an argument. So for Aristotle, it was not the question of validity or invalidity, rather a pair of propositions which can produce a result, or whether a pair of proposition cannot produce a result. The ones which can produce a result were called concludent, and the ones which could not produce a result were called inconcludent. However, in the later antiquity, and especially in the 14th century, there were certain changes with the because if you know the history, after Aristotle's death, and he was turned down from Athens, and the world has gone for a complete change, and nobody studied Aristotle. Greek philosophy was no more great at that point of time. Certain other things came, the death of Alexander and so on, made the things very difficult and different at that point of time. Later in the 7th, 8th century, with the Logica Nova and the Logica Scotus, basically the medieval period, certain studies of Aristotle surfaced back, and people started studying and taking interest and all these things. But then there were a lot of changes. The lot of changes which has occurred was precisely because of that many of his texts could not be reproduced. Things were translated, and they were also understood in a completely different manner, because there was a gap between a lot of things. Now we have again, or the English world is having again access to certain basic works of Aristotle, and because of that, we every now find certain new things and theories about him. Now, the question is that the changes which took place in Aristotle's theory have molded or have changed the course of studying syllogisms as well. So it completely changed the way Aristotle studied syllogisms. Now, maybe these history may not interest you much, but still, if you see that this is basically the definition of a categorical syllogism as we study today. A categorical syllogism is a deductive argument form. Definitely, it was a deductive argument form as well in Aristotle as well, which comprises three categorical propositions. Now, this was not originally present. Two of them act as premises for a conclusion to follow. Now, Aristotle did, or he has taken in most of the cases, two premises and one conclusion. But again, he has not said that there has to be two premises and one conclusion. The categorical syllogism so formed contains precisely three terms, each of which occurs twice. So all these things which we read now over here, I guess so there is only one thing, that is syllogism is a deductive argument. That was all which was expressed by Aristotle, and he has a completely different methodology altogether. But then those methodologies are not accepted or adopted by the later logicians or the people who followed him. So what we see today is not actually the way he expressed it. Now, if you again see Aristotle's theory, he recognized 3 figures and 14 valid syllogisms. Now, this was the study, and this is something which he found out. But in the medieval era, after, or say by 14th century, the 4th figure was also added, and we found that there were 24 syllogisms valid. Now, this was the list. So from 14, they found 14 valid syllogisms. Now, can you see one thing, that there is an addition of one figure, and there is also an addition of at least 10 syllogisms which were found to be valid. So this number, or this understanding of number, has become very important, that every now and then you need to find a syllogism which is valid, there is a figure which is presentable in some fashion or the other. So this is the line of argument which was taken in the medieval era. But later there was this concept called strengthened and weakened moods. That means that if the premise is sufficiently strong, so you can weaken it, and suppose if the conclusion is weak, and you can again strengthen it. So I will not go into the I will say the technicalities of this, but the syllogisms were reduced because certain syllogisms were nothing but the strengthened or the weakened mood of another syllogism. So if you can see that there are spaces here, 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 and here, which were taken back. That means that if you see the last slide, all these syllogisms were like this, but now they were taken back. Few. In fact, you can see that 5 syllogisms were taken back, and from 24 the list came to 19, that okay, these 19 are basic syllogisms which are valid, the rest of them can be understood as the strengthened or the weakened moods. So fine, again, if you see, numbers were the things which people were trying to play. If you move a little bit forward and come to the modern era, that means we come to the 18th, 19th century understanding, with the intervention of Boole, with the intervention of Frege, and later on with Venn and then Peirce diagrams, you will find the list of syllogisms. You can find it in any textbook of logic, that there are 15 syllogisms which are valid, and this is basically the list, and there are 4 figures. Now, as I'm telling you, that these numbers have become very important. Mostly you will find that people will agree that there are 256 syllogisms which are possible, out of which some will say 14 are valid, that was Aristotle, 24 are valid, medieval logicians part 1, 19 are valid, medieval logicians part 2, 15 are valid, this is basically the study of I will say modern logicians, and a person like me has also found that 8 syllogisms are valid, because I also published a paper on this. But the question is not about numbers. The question is about something more important and more pivotal to the understanding of syllogisms. And that is something which we have missed out. In fact, there is a paper by Colin Williamson, he died recently, where he said that there are 2, 6, 2, 1, 4, 4 syllogisms which are possible. And if you will see his paper, it's an amazing paper. Believe me, I'm not a big fan of people who do not go as per the conventions of the syllogism. But this paper is an amazing paper, and he has talked about syllogisms from very, very different ways. I can provide you with the reference as well. We have the references. And there he found 24 plus 24, that is equal to 48 syllogisms which are valid over there. And his way of dealing with syllogisms is a little bit different, but again, it makes a lot of sense. Then a person like Lewis Carroll, you know, the author of Alice in Wonderland, his actual name was Charles Dobson. He found that there are exactly 3 syllogisms which are valid, or in fact, you can bring the list of syllogisms to 3 only. That was his idea. And again, you can read his book, The Game of Logic. It's again an interesting book, and a very he was both poetic or say into prose and poetry, as well as into logic, and he wrote amazingly as well. And he has also shown it with the help of diagrams. Now, why I'm bringing this concept of diagrams over here? Because diagrams open up the understanding of syllogisms. And now you will, why I am bringing this concept again, you will find it soon with a few concepts which I will be discussing in this paper. But numbers kept coming. There are n number of papers which either reduce the number of syllogisms or increase the number of syllogisms. Some will say that this is the way syllogism should be studied. Some will say that is the way syllogism should be studied, and so on. So there is a lot of, I will say, deliberation on the numbers. Therefore, I kept this slide name as also numbers. But if we move forward, and see Venn pairs diagrams. So we know that these are basically Venn pairs diagrams. Now, why I'm showing you these diagrams, many of you are aware of Venn pairs diagrams. Many of you may not be aware of Venn pairs diagram. But there is one thing which I can tell you, and you can also understand this if I make it a little bit bigger. So maybe you will see it.
अच्छा सुमंता सर उसको स्लाइड शो मोड पे ले आइए तो ज्यादा बड़ा हो जाएगा.
अच्छा,
अभी वो
मैं
स्लाइड
देखता
शो
हूँ.
मोड पे नहीं है.
ओके, एक मिनट इसको लेकर आते हैं. Okay, so if you see this, this is basic Venn diagram or Venn pairs diagrams actually. And if you see all S is P, right? So if I ask anybody that what will be the diagram of all P is S, so you can see that then the part of if the shading is in on the left side. Now, once you will make all P is S, the shading will be only on the right side. The left side will be empty. Now, it is a little bit technical, but just to give you an idea that the left side, I will come back. This shading from here will actually go to this part. Okay. However, this will not be the case over here and here, because here it cannot go anywhere else but here only. The same goes for the I proposition as well. But again, in O proposition, that is some S is not P, this cross will go over here, or this X mark will go over here. That is the idea which I want to tell you, or something like that. Why I'm giving you this example, or why I'm taking this example, because there is a concept called diagrammatic congruence, and also there are concepts like say this one, counterpart equivalence. Now, if you see these two diagrams, these two diagrams looks very different, right? If you see A, B, C, and their positioning and so on. But if you look at them a little bit more, say, if you concentrate a little bit more, you will see that they are basically the same diagrams, or at least same diagram means that they are representing the same information. Why I'm saying that they are representing the same information? You can see that there is a circle C, and inside, completely inside that, there is a circle A. So circle A in both the diagrams is exactly inside circle C, right? So you can understand this. Then if you see circle B, so B is some part of B is outside circle C, and some part of B is inside circle C. So this is also common between the two diagrams. And if you see again closely, you will find that B and A intersects. So B and A also intersects on both the diagrams. So if you see, these are called as counterpart equivalence diagrams. That means that irrespective of the fact that they are not geometrically the same, but they represent the same information. There is absolutely same representation which is possible with these two diagrams, because C will be the superset of A, and A and B are intersecting, right? And A is a proper subset of C. So if you see these two diagrams, so this is called in diagrammatic understanding as the understanding of counterpart equivalence. Now, counterpart equivalence precisely means that there can be two diagrams which do not look congruent, or they do not look geometrically same, but they display or they represent the same information. That is the idea, or that is something which we are trying to understand here. Now, there is also a concept called okay, you can also take it with the help of a Venn diagram. So if you see in this case as well, they are exactly the same diagrams, right? I have just moved, or say changed the orientation of the circles, or else if you see, the S, the M, and the P are exactly the same. है ना? If you rotate one of them in some way, so you will find that it will produce the same diagram. You can see it for yourself. You can check it with the diagram. So they are basically called as counterpart equivalences. Now, there is a difference between the last diagram which we saw, this one and this one. In the last one, irrespective of the fact how much you move them or how much you orient or disorient them, they will never look exactly the same. but in this diagram they will look exactly the same as well if you change the orientation of these two diagrams, right? So this is something which you can understand, because if we move the right diagram for a clockwise spin, so slowly and slowly it will become the same diagram as you can see over here. Okay, so these are certain things like these are certain things which you need to understand from the diagrammatic reasoning, that these kind of these are certain things which you will see in diagrammatic reasoning which you may not be able to see when you are doing, say, logic with the help of symbols, or logic even with the help of language, or with the help of sentences and propositions and statements and so on. Because statements and propositions may not express things exactly the way as diagrams will, because diagrams will always have the same representation. I will give you the example a little bit later. Let us come to this diagram, and those people who understand logic will understand that they exactly look the same and they are the same diagram, but actually they can be called as different diagrams as well, because one of them is EI1, one is EI2, the third one is EI3, the fourth one is EI4. That means that the change in the figure does not make a change in the diagram of these syllogisms. And the thing is, and again, it's a technical thing, but I may tell you, because when we will come to the observations, it will be easier for you to understand that why I was talking about all these things. The thing is that we do name certain things differently, but in reality, they may all be the same, right? However, until and unless we can see the line of reasoning or the diagram or the say process, we will always consider them to be quite different. So why I'm proposing, or why I am representing all these things before you, is because first thing is that diagrams are easy for all of us to understand, because we do not need a lot of study for it, because you can very clearly see that these all diagrams look the same. And if I tell you that these all diagrams look the same but they represent different information, so you will say that, look, I don't think so that they are different representations, because if they look the same, they may be also representing the same information, as I told you in the last few slides, as well as the diagrams. So this understanding has to come, that irrespective of the fact that we are naming it in a different way, they actually are the same things. It's like when we differentiate between sentence and statement, we say that there can be different languages used for different sentences, but then they all represent the same proposition, right? Or they all represent the same statement. So given that understanding, I'm trying to bring this point a little bit further. In fact, if you see these two diagrams, they also look the same, but they represent again very, very different information. One is an A, the other one is an E proposition, if you see, but they belong to two different figures altogether, right? And if you see this diagram, it does not represent only say EI. Usually, if suppose somebody asks you that, okay, draw EIO, so you will draw this diagram. Does not matter whether it is EIO1 or 2 or 3 or 4. And now let me add to this. It's not only EIO1, 2, 3 or 4. It is EI. After that, you can put A, E, I, O, and then there will be 1, 2, 3, 4. So actually, it is a diagram which is representing 16 syllogisms, out of which 4 are valid and 12 are invalid. That is how we say. Now, the question which comes to our mind very fast is that the same diagram represents both valid as well as invalid argument. Is it, or is it making sense? Because if we say that an argument can be either valid or invalid, and this is the diagrammatic representation for it, so how can the same diagram represent validity as well as invalidity? So you need to go beyond this thinking and understand that it's not the question of validity or invalidity. Rather, it is the question of concludent pairs of propositions which are premises, or the inconcludent pair of propositions which are acting as premises. So if there is a concludent pair, you will find that some information can come out. If it is an inconcludent pair, then irrespective of the fact, whatever you are trying to do, the any resultant will not follow. That is the idea. But come on, let's move further. I will not take this. I was talking about this, that E and I propositions are actually diagrammatically identical. However, the A and O propositions are not diagrammatically identical. That means if you change the subject or the predicate of these propositions, so the diagrams are different. But in case of E and I, the diagrams are not different. We also know that the middle term, it's all about the position. So those people who know about the position of the terms and all these things will understand that there are two ways actually in which the things are changing. If you see below, these are basically the position of the middle terms and the first, second, third, and fourth figure. But I will not like to go more into this right now. I will try to show you the diagrams. If you see above, I have not written the conclusion. I have only written the premises. A1 looks like this, 2 looks like this, 3 looks like this, and 4 looks like this. AO also 1, 2, 3, and 4 looks like this. Then OA 1, 2, and 3, 4 looks like this, and OI 1, 2, OO 1, 2, 3, 4 looks like this. Now, these are basically not representing only, say, 16 syllogisms, but 16 into 4 syllogisms. That will be around 64 syllogisms, right? Now, if you come to here, then you will see that even one diagram is representing two figures, right? Like AE 1 and 3, that means 1 and 3 figure, and so on. So you will see that there are a lot of syllogisms which are representing or diagrams which are representing actually two figures and obviously two combinations. Okay, fine. I'm again not getting into the detail of it, but just I'm trying to show you that this is what is happening. And if I show you this slide, it is actually showing that one diagram is representing actually four figures: EI, E, IE, and II. So if you see that these are representing actually four representations. Now, what I'm trying to bring in front of you is that this number game of 256 syllogism or 264144 syllogisms or 48 syllogisms valid or 24 syllogisms valid, 14 syllogisms valid, 19 syllogisms valid may not take us anywhere or has taken us enough, and now there is no potency in pursuing a field as well as the trajectory like that. The more important thing for us to understand is that whether we have a concludent pair, that means can a syllogism be formed out of it, or we do not have a concludent pair. That is the idea. So actual number of syllogisms, if you see, these are basically 36 rather than 256. The number 256 which used to come, I can give you the calculation of it as well, is not the right way of putting it. Rather than it is 36 because of these 36 diagrams. If you count, these are 12, 15 plus 16 is 32 plus 4 is 36. Yeah. So there are exactly 36 ways in which syllogisms can be produced. However, irrespective of the fact that the syllogism can be produced, but they will not have concludent and inconcludent pairs. Rather, the number is very, very less. So I will bring your attention to this thing, that in numerous passages of Analytica Priora is basically the book of Aristotle where you will find the theory of syllogism. He said like this: there will be a syllogism. There is a syllogism. A syllogism is formed. A syllogism is possible. Or he wrote, there will be no syllogism. Now, the above expressions like there will be a syllogism, there is a syllogism is formed, or a syllogism is possible, is basically representing the concludent pair. However, there will be no syllogism is basically representing an inconcludent pair, or a syllogism is not possible. So this is the line of argument which we may need to take rather than the line of argument which has been pursued since, say, the medieval era through antiquity and then even to the modern logicians. I will again not go into this detail much, but rather I will bring your kind attention to another fact. Many a people can object to this, that a Venn pairs diagram or any diagram does not represent a syllogism. Rather, it represents only two propositions, right? Because what we draw are only the propositions of the premises and not the conclusion. The conclusion should come out of it. Now, for this, Buridan himself, who is again a medieval logician, said, it seems to me that Aristotle takes a syllogism not to be composed of premises and conclusion, but composed only of premises from which a conclusion can be inferred. Now, if you follow this line of argument, then you will follow very clearly that the understanding of concludent and inconcludent pairs in syllogistic is far more important and valued than the understanding of validity and invalidity, right? And moreover, does not matter. Professor Mishra is also here, and I will like to listen to his comments as well. That whenever we are taking an argument, what we work with is the premises. We are not working with the conclusion. The conclusion must appear to come out, or the conclusion must be proven, right? The conclusion is never taken in the argument. The conclusion has to come out with the set of premises. That is the whole idea. Now, there can be a lot of understanding that the conclusion itself can be the premise of an argument if it is a tautology. We understand that. But in any way, if you see, we are not bothered with that what is the conclusion. We are bothered with the premises and whether those premises can supply a conclusion to us. That is the idea, or that is the thing which we are looking for, right? Again, I will not like to go on this line because then there will be a lot more to discuss. There are also a lot of other things over here which I will not like to talk about right now, but maybe I will like to come to a far more general point by Francis Bacon, who said that truth emerges more quickly from error than from confusion. And if we talk about invalid syllogisms, or if we take invalid syllogisms into consideration, we will actually understand that, or the notion of inconcludent pair, we understand that actually nothing is an invalid thing, rather it is an inconcluding thing, right? The overemphasis on how many or the number of syllogisms or the figures is basically a later outcry. The essence of syllogism was uh, in the understanding of concludent and inconcludent pair. So these are certain things which I will like to bring. I guess so. I am quite close to my time, but I have just a couple of slides before I finish. So the first thing is that if you see Aristotle, or if you see the whole theory of uh, syllogistic logic with the lens of diagrams, and with especially the lens of Venn pairs diagrams, then it takes us again back to the Aristotelian era. Many people will say that Venn diagrams do not validate Aristotle's logic. I know that. But what I'm saying is it does tells us that Aristotle was more interested in concludent and inconcludent pairs rather than saying that Dharapti and Brahmantip are basically valid syllogisms. So the importance is that if we can see things in front of us, the solutions look far more viable and the solutions look far more clear to us, rather than if we argue or if we analyze but we cannot see it properly, right? Because human mind is also a very having that pictorial memory and tries to figure out that how things work and so on with the help of some kind of pictures, right? Or some kind of diagrams. So with the help of diagrams, you can also see that nothing is valid or invalid. It's just the concludent as well as the inconcludent pairs. So this was my last, or this was our, in fact, last search, that there are actually 8 concludent pairs. I can name them: AA, AE, AI, AO, EA, EI, IA, and OA. And there are 8, in fact, inconcludent pairs as well, which are EE, EO, IE, II, IO, OE, OI, and OO, which we found with this study. So I rest my case with you guys now. And